I have a few questions for you. Do you want to know where this beautiful art store is? Do you enjoy going to art supply stores and just browsing through the beautiful pens, the pigments, the pastels, the watercolors, the paints, everything? And have you wanted to know what the inside of Choosing Keeping looks like? Do you love watercolors and enjoy seeing people paint with watercolors? If the answer to all this is yes, then you are watching the right video, because I finally went to Choosing Keeping in London and it was such a wonderful experience. In this video, we'll tour through it together. We'll talk about some of the beautiful art supplies that they have there. And at the end, I could not resist doing a small painting of the shop front as well, which I will talk you through. After so many people recommended this store, I have finally decided to go. Choosing Keeping is a beautiful art and stationery store near Covent Garden in central London. This is the view when you walk in, and if you had the feeling that I had, it was essentially like awe. It's like nothing I've seen before. The store itself is a work of art, and then you look around and you realize that there are just so many beautiful art supplies as well. In terms of the thing that first drew me in, obviously I went to look at their watercolors. These are Japanese watercolors, and you'll know that I already have the Kuretake Gansai watercolors, which are not from Choosing Keeping but quite similar, and they work differently but are so nice. These have been curated into different sets, and this is their swatch cards which highlight those sets, and again, just the attention to detail is wonderful. I'll flick through them so that you can see if there's a palette that really draws you in and you want to look into. Looking at the seasonal sets, you can see that they've kind of gone for colors more related to that season, but they took things further and also have like palettes that have colors that they feel relate to a certain era in time. And for me, the 30s and the 40s were my favorite. I love the moody feel of the 30s and that dark purple, but the 40s I felt like was a more complete set, i.e. I could use that set in its entirety because it almost has like the primaries and then really interesting shades of green as well. But all the sets were really intriguing, and it's so interesting to try and think of a time in terms of a color palette. Like, for example, I can't imagine depicting 2022 in a color palette. And those sets were £25 each, which you can see on the back of them on that cute little bird sticker. Like I said, they had lots of different sets as well. And the other two that really drew me in were the blacks palette. So this is the Sumi E Blacks 1. And I was just drawn by like how beautiful and pigmented and dark they are, and I think they would make wonderful shadows. And then the next one that caught my attention was the Sumi Blacks 2. They are £20 each, and these were basically the things that had me contemplating just breaking the no buy, like getting the 40 set and the black set, because they would look so beautiful. But let me show you the rest of the palettes. As I said, they have a wonderful array of colors. And as well as watercolors and other art supplies that I'll show you soon, they also had swatches of their inks which are available. In terms of other favorites, there was this £75 35 color Japanese watercolor set, which kind of reminds me of my current Kuretake color selection. And then the darkness and light palette, because I found that it incorporated both the Sumi E Blacks 1 and the Sumi E Blacks 2, I feel. In addition to the 1940s palette or maybe separately the Sumi Blacks 2, and I couldn't pick between the two. But there were so many more beautiful paints. This is just a small example of them, as well as travel brushes and beautiful ceramic palettes. They had papers, they had pastels, even these pastels that I hadn't seen before that looked really beautiful, and again, I just hadn't seen before. There were also some coloring pencils that had beautiful color range, and even though I'm not primarily a pastel or pencil artist, they had me tempted. I know I said I don't like using pastels, but I may make an exception for this because, well, I mean, wow. And then we have some oil paints. And then we have some pigments. And then la pièce de résistance. Some beautiful watercolors. If you are enjoying the video so far and want to see more tours of some beautiful art stores I've seen in London, then don't forget to hit the like button and to consider subscribing, as it makes a massive difference. Thank you to everyone who's already supported me and this channel on Ko-fi. It is a platform similar to Patreon where I create art challenges, and I'm building an art community where we talk together, do art challenges together, share photo references, share our art, our experiences, and the art supplies that we're getting as well. So not only is it fun and great for me and you, but it also means that we can continue this channel running, as the support makes a massive difference. So thank you in advance. Check out the link down below if you are interested and would like to be a part of it as well. Thus far, we have been looking through some of their beautiful plain paper and ruled paper notebooks, but on top of that, they also had their watercolor papers, which are called aquarella at the front. There is a wonderful YouTube artist called Natasha Newton that I'll link down below, who has also done some hauls from Choosing Keeping and done some swatches of their colors, and it's beautiful. So definitely check out her channel, you won't be disappointed. Their price point is slightly higher than other standard places, but that being said, their supplies are far from standard. They do pride themselves on finding things that are unusual, that are new and novel, or that are plucked from old times. So naturally everything is quite unique, and as a result that is reflected in the price. If, like me, you are super curious and you will have wondered why they're called Choosing Keeping, it wasn't really a name that was making sense to me. And I read up about it a little bit more, and it was actually really interesting. They say that they want people to be considerate and discerning in their choices, and to honor and care for their purchases for years to come, thus choosing and keeping them, which, when you think about it, makes sense, and it's such a beautiful kind of sentiment behind that. So these things that they are creating, these supplies, are built to last. I think it's a lovely sentiment, especially coming from a time where I feel like things are not built to last, so that people can just keep buying and buying and buying. They almost promote the opposite of that, which was quite refreshing. I will touch on this a little bit later as well, but before I do, I wanted to mention that the staff there were just so kind and so lovely, and let me look around, let me video, as well as also taking the time to talk me through different art supplies and how they came to be here and how they are made. They really took very nice care of me, which was good, especially as I was on an art supply no buy, which means that my aim was to not buy art supplies right there, but more to look around and see. And as you may know, if you have seen my Italy vlog, I went to an art store there and had quite a negative experience. And I think it's kind of made me a little bit more apprehensive about actually going to stores, which is quite a pity because I never know how it's going to be received. But they were incredibly welcoming. So I have nothing but good news to report from my time in Choosing Keeping. And given their emphasis on wanting conscientious customers who think about what they buy and buy it to keep it, I think that it was the perfect store to reintroduce me back into actually going to art stores. And as I was leaving, I felt so inspired that I actually wanted to paint the storefront. So as you may know, last year I did a series where I was painting cafes and restaurants, and I thought, what better thing to do this year than to paint some beautiful art stores. So this is the first one in that series. The materials that I'm going to be using are the Kuretake watercolor paints, because it feels fitting given all the Japanese paints that they had there. And if you want to see a separate review about them, I will link that down below for you in the description. As well as that, I'll be using my Paul Rubens watercolor hot press block and my Princeton Neptune Aqua Elite watercolor brush. All feels like a mouthful. I took a bit of creative license when creating this piece, and this may very well be a subject that I end up painting again, because I feel like there are so many different ways that I could capture this beautiful store. But for this one, I wanted to capture the side, the bit that actually said Choosing Keeping, and I also wanted to keep some of the elements such as the symbol with the quill on the side and the address at the top, and the kind of lovely dark deep greens and the golds and the warm bricks. I have recorded enough paintings for me to know that I seem to approach everything a bit differently. In this instance, I did a very light pencil sketch initially and then went straight in with watercolour, whereas sometimes I also like adding ink to kind of give some more structured detail. If you want to see more real-time tutorials or real-time videos where I more talk about my thought process and why I'm doing things the way that I do it, then definitely check out my Ko-fi, which I will link down below, as that is where I will be doing that. This painting took me probably an hour to do, may have been quicker if I wasn't talking to my brother as I was painting, but it was definitely a nice enjoyable process. As I mentioned, I was using the Paul Rubens watercolor block, which is 100% cotton. So yes, guys, I get it, there is a difference. You were right, there is a difference using 100% cotton paper versus cellulose paper. Does that mean that I won't use cellulose moving forward? No, but it does mean that I am a bit more aware of the difference and I'm slowly easing my way into better quality art supplies. I thought that this would be a good opportunity to also talk about the no-buy that I was doing recently, given that I went to an art store during a no-buy. And for those of you who don't know what that is, it essentially means that you choose not to buy whatever for a certain period of time. Some people, for example, have been doing not buying any art supplies for a year. Some people do it for a month. Some people do it for a few weeks. And it doesn't have to be just art supplies. It can be anything. And for me, I was kind of sitting down and reflecting on my spending in general, and my natural countenance isn't to spend a lot of money, but it has been over the past 2 years when it comes to art supplies, and thus I told myself that I wouldn't buy any art supplies for a month, just to ease myself in. I know myself, if I say that I am not going to buy anything for a year, then I'll just end up not doing it at all, because it feels like an unsurmountable challenge. And the aim of it was to make me more conscious of my spending, conscious of why I am spending what I am, why I'm buying all these art supplies, and to also make me pay better attention to the supplies that I do have. In the words of, choosing, keeping, you want to add, choose, keep, and then actually use the supplies that you have. And a step of doing that is at some point you have to stop buying and you actually have to start using the supplies more and more and more. So that's basically what I was doing. I started it off as a 1 month thing, and then eventually I just took it a day at a time, like Artist Lovers Anonymous, and it got to 4 months of not buying any art supplies. And to be perfectly honest, it could have gone longer if I'd exercised maybe a little bit more self-control. It was definitely an interesting experience, and though I don't think I will do a no buy per se, like complete ban on art supplies again, I am definitely more mindful and more conscious of the art supplies that I have and why I'm buying them, resisting the urge to buy them if it's just because I've had a bad day at work, and actually focusing more on whether they help me develop as an artist. I also want to kind of take more time to use the supplies that I have and show how we can get different results with the supplies that we do have, if that makes sense. Personally, when I see a beautiful piece of art done by an artist, a lot of the time I do start thinking, oh, what art supply did they use? And almost feel like I won't get those results unless I have those art supplies, which is not true. I won't get those results because I am not that artist. And I think that's what it comes down to. So yeah, I want this to kind of be a reminder to be conscientious about the art supplies that you're buying and drawing joy from using them as well as buying them. I can't lie, I still absolutely love buying art supplies. I will buy art supplies in the future, but like Choosing Keeping has highlighted, it's a question of being conscientious and mindful of the art supplies that you're buying and taking care of them and showing them some love. And I'd say choosing them, keeping them, and using them. I think that's also where it comes down to. As always, I am curious about your own thoughts. Please let me know down below in the comments, because if you're listening, you are a real MVP and I appreciate you. But let me know, have you done a no buy? Have you done a low buy? What are your feelings around buying art supplies? Are you very disciplined and only buy what you need? Do you buy lots of stuff? There is no right or wrong answer, and I think that's the other thing. I didn't do this to shame myself or to shame others or anything like that. I think at the end of the day, you're all grown. It's your finances. Spend money on what makes you happy. But that being said, I personally felt like I was buying too much and sometimes buying for the wrong reasons. And I wanted to take a pause to think about why that was the case and to address it, so that if I do buy art supplies, it's coming from a healthier place. And I think that I've got there. I think that that's where I'm at. But where are you at? I will do some videos about how I managed to do it and some tips and tricks or the lessons that I learned, which will be personal. I think different people will do it for different reasons. Different people get different results. And I don't necessarily think everyone should do it. I just think it's good to reflect on. I wasn't going to mention it or talk about it here, but when I was reading about the ethos behind choosing keeping, it felt like an appropriate kind of topic to talk about, especially given that I didn't buy anything there. And I felt guilty for not buying anything because they had so many beautiful art supplies. But again, it's, it wasn't in my budget, so I didn't buy it. But I really do hope to get some of their watercolors one day soon. If you are still listening, you are a real MVP and I really, really, really appreciate you. I'd also like to give a special thank you to everyone who's supporting me on Ko-fi. You are all so amazing and I can't even express what a massive difference you're making. If you'd like to join, click the link above. Don't forget to subscribe, and I've linked some videos that I think you'll find interesting on the right. See you next week. Bye.